Hello, my name is Ethan Thomas. Today I wanted to talk about a few things. I want to talk about accountability and when to cut somebody off. That's crazy. That's crazy. Crazy little topic right there. So, I think before I can even get into accountability, I got to explain a few thought processes first. So that thought process makes more sense. So, I think the first thought process would be that there is no good or bad. There is no good or bad. There just is. And if you're religious or you're spiritual, I guess the way you could look at it is that God does not, or the universe, whatever you like to call it, does not look at us differently based on the confines of good or bad. Because I believe good or bad was just a social construct we created so that we could try to understand why life is the way it is better. Because it really is hard to understand why bad things happen to us, to the people that we love, to like children, stuff like that. Why do people hurt people? Why does that happen? Why does that happen? And unfortunately, I think there is not something to understand. It's just life. It's just life. I believe personally, we reincarnate, and when we come onto the earth, we choose all of the events, or our souls choose all of the events and traumas that happen to us, depending on the kind of person you want to be. So, for example, you reincarnate, and your goal is to become a person who understands everybody, right? So the trauma you go through in this life is going to make you into that person, which would probably be hard. It's probably a little difficult, but life isn't supposed to be easy. It's hard for everybody. It's hard for the animals. It's hard for every person. You really don't know what battles people are going through. So good or bad doesn't exist. So if good or bad doesn't exist, like what is right or wrong? What is right or wrong? I think it's more about what is just and what is unjust. For example, there are a lot of things that are illegal, but it doesn't mean they're morally unjust, right? For example, you're a father, right? And somebody out on the street kills your son in cold blood. I'm not going to be too upset if you go out and kill that man or kill whoever killed your son, because that's justice. But I feel like we get lost because we don't know ourselves. The way that society and a lot of religions are structured, it's structured to keep you away from God and keep you away from yourself, right? Keep you away from a feeling of oneness, right? I think that when you are truly connected to yourself, then you can be truly connected to God. But if you don't understand any of the trauma you went through, you don't understand your childhood, you haven't forgiven your parents, I feel like that's a really big thing. I don't think many people have fully forgiven their parents. I don't think anyone has, really, because it could be the smallest little thing, but your dad, your mom, supposed to be the person that protects you always, but they're human too. They're not perfect, and a lot of times our parents put us through a lot of shit, and there's kind of a sense of guilt in accepting that. So a lot of people have a hard time, one, even accepting their parents treated them bad. Then they can't forgive their parents. Then they can't even understand the trauma they went through. So you don't know yourself. So just and unjust as opposed to good or bad, because things aren't just good or bad. It's not. I read this really wise Instagram post. Sometimes shit be Hispanic. What does that mean? It's not just black or white all the time. Really sit with that for a moment. Shit be Hispanic. But yeah, just and unjust as opposed to good or bad, because when you look through the lens of good or bad, I feel like you're kind of crutching yourself. I don't know if that's the word I'm trying to look for there, but you just aren't allowing yourself to live up to your full potential because you're caught up in the confines. And it really is a confine. It's a box you put yourself in. The confine of good or bad. And then you can't look at experiences for what they are, or sit with feelings for what they are, because you're too busy trying to assign good or bad, when nothing really is. Nothing has labels. It just is. We can't try to understand everything. That's okay. I think that's okay. Some things aren't for us to understand. I tried so hard with this person. Why did they still treat me this way if I did everything right? I don't know. They might just suck, and that's okay. Everyone has to go through it, in my opinion. I think everyone has to be a person that gives out a lot of negativity before you can be a person that gives out positivity. So now this brings me to accountability. The reason that the construct of good or bad and just and unjust was important before I got into accountability is because that's why a lot of people can't take accountability. It's because they have put themselves into the box of good or bad, and then they just can't take accountability because of guilt. So, for example, you might have a friend and they've been disrespecting you hella, and you just want to be like, hey, I don't like that. I love you very much, but I don't like the way you're treating me right now. If this person was an emotionally intelligent person, a mature person, knew themselves well and loved themselves as well, they'd be like, I'm going to sit with this discomfort right now, that this mirror, because that's all we are for each other, mirrors. I'm going to show you the things in yourself that you don't like, and you're going to show me the things in myself that I don't like. And you have an option there to ignore it, just keep going, put it behind you, or to really sit with that and make yourself the person you want to be. So back to the person with the accountability. If they were an emotionally mature person, they knew themselves very well, they would sit with the discomfort and be like, wow, that is disrespectful, and I don't want to treat people I love like that. But when people kind of get stuck in good or bad, they're like, oh my God, that was a bad thing I did. Therefore, I am objectively bad. Therefore, I need to die right now. Kind of extreme, but some people think like that. And you don't have to. You don't have to. Everybody makes mistakes. Everyone is human. Everyone does bad things. When I was a kid, I used to be beating the shit out of my little brother. Now we're best friends. I'm sorry, Jonah, I love you. But yeah. But a lot of times, people will see the mirror, right? See whatever that other person is showing them, and they want to ignore it. Or they want to ignore it, and they don't want to believe that it's true. So what they do is that they kind of create a narrative in their head so that the other person is bad. And that's like projection. I'm projecting all of my hurt onto you because I cannot sit with the fact that I did something that hurts you, because it makes me feel like I am a bad person. So now, when to cut somebody off? In my opinion, right, you should be incredibly liberal with how you cut people off. You should be incredibly conservative with who you give yourself to and what energies you meddle with, because there is no one more important than you, right? You have been put on this earth to take care of yourself and to make sure you survive. It's self-preservation. Why would I want to be around someone that just makes me feel bad all the time? It doesn't matter how long we've known each other. You might have been my best friend for the last 5 years, but if you're treating me like shit now, I can't do that. I can't do it, And that's okay. That's okay. I feel like a lot of people don't think it's okay to just cut people off because of like emotional attachment, and then like, then you get into like how long we've known each other. Like, bro, we've been boys since the 2nd grade. Okay, then why'd you kill my dog? Another extreme example, but I'm sure somebody's living that out there. There's like 8 billion of us here. Who knows? But yeah, when to cut somebody off? When they refuse to understand you, right? When they put their unwillingness to experience discomfort above you and your feelings. You cut that bitch off right at the root, and you never talk to them again. No, just kidding. If they come back one day with true understanding of your emotions and how they hurt you, hey, you might want to let him back into your life, especially with someone you click with at some point. But do not be afraid to cut off anybody. Anybody. Best friends, family, whatever. Because now, obviously, don't just start cutting people off with the first thing that upsets you. No, this is like you know for a fact this person isn't going to try to understand you. They're not working on themselves. They're not moving through their own emotions, sitting with themselves, and they're not bettering themselves day to day. That person probably doesn't speak very positively to themselves, and they're not going to speak positively to you. And there's another thing that you can tell with people. Like, if people get really upset, right, when you call them out, and it's just kind of like verbal diarrhea of hurt and hate and whatever, my opinion, that's someone who's emotionally immature. And you don't need to be surrounding yourself with people like that, because those people are just energy vampires. They're just taking your love and your light because they don't know how to love themselves. So yeah, like people who get really upset at friends for calling them out and they just get really mean, right? That's, if they're talking to someone they love like that, imagine how they talk to themselves. It's probably not really nice, you know? And that's another thing that we all have to work on, is how we talk to ourselves, you know? But yeah, accountability and when to cut somebody off.
ET.